The June 10th, 2021 agenda session meeting, and welcome everyone. At this time, I would like to ask Commissioner Michael Booth if he would do the invocation, please, followed by the pledge.
Thank you. Y'all join me in a moment of prayer and thanks. Good afternoon, God. Thanks for stopping by again, giving us the opportunity to make decisions that will positively affect, starting with the people of all of Cumberland County and hopefully trickling out to the state of North Carolina and our great country. We know that you are the ultimate decider, but if you could share a little wisdom on us for these local issues, we'd really appreciate it. Also like to thank you for making a special place for Lee Thomas Council. Tell TC I said hello, and we'll see him when you decide that we are worthy. We ask all this in your name. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wait a minute, TC, what? Tell Jeanette she lost her keys out of the parking lot. Wait a minute, you put them in my pocket? Yeah, there they are. Those are in the trunk, behind the trunk of your car when I walked by it today.
David Copperfield.
Nope.
Here's the last topic. Before I call on the county manager, if you all allow me to start, my first nephew's birthday is today, and I didn't realize until I looked at what the date was on the agenda. And so William Oscar Evans II is an old man today. So happy birthday to him. At this time, Madam Manager.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I do have some changes that I would respectfully ask that the board consider today. I would ask that the board add an item under number 4. It would be item 4R if you choose to add this. It is an item being brought forward, a request from Mr. Lee Warren, the Register of Deeds. It's a new vault doorway for the Register of Deeds office. We also, the county attorney has requested a closed session for attorney-client, and the chairman is requesting a closed session for personnel. Those are the changes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Can I get a motion?
I have one additional request if I could. I was requested by some folks from the P4P that they didn't want to come and delay us in the regular course of a meeting of business by taking 10 people to sign up for 3 minutes and dividing up a presentation speech one after the other. They would ask if they could get on our August agenda session to come in and give us a short update from one of their representatives and Senator W. If that's doable.
And, Madam Manager.
That's certainly, we'll add that to the agenda in August.
In that case, I'd move that we add as presented the 2 additions of R and S to today's agenda.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Tom.
Madam Manager?
Yes, sir. The next item is item 2, approval of your minutes. Those are from the May 13th, 2021 agenda session.
There a motion?
Second.
Who made the motion?
This council.
Okay. And there was a second by Commissioner Booth. All in favor?
Unanimous.
Thank you.
That leads us into our presentations. The first one today is on our Norcrest sewer study findings. I think a couple of months ago, we had a conversation with the board about having a consultant come in and take a look at our system. And so today I'm going to ask our county engineer, Jermaine Walker, to present the engineering firm and the speaker and present the item.
Welcome, Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. In 2009, at the direction of the Board of Commissioners, the Public Utilities Department entered into a contract with Freese & Nichols Incorporated in order to conduct a comprehensive sewer evaluation of the Norcrest sewer system. Mr. Brian White spearheaded that study, and he's here to present the findings of that study and answer any questions as to the results of the study and or the recommendations included in the study.
Thank you, Jermaine, and I appreciate you having me here today. And I'd just like to start out and say thank you for having Freese & Nichols work on this project. It's an important project for the county. We understand that. It's been a great project to work with. The county staff has been great. Amy Hall has been really great to work with from the staff. So today I just want to give you kind of an overview of our study on the Northern Cumberland Regional Sewer System, Norcrest for short, and a comprehensive evaluation of the sewer system and a CIP involved with that. So you may not all be familiar with the Norcrest system, so just a little background on that system. This was a joint venture between the towns of Falcon, Wade, and Godwin, and an opportunity to come together and regionalize a sewer system there for the towns. It was constructed back in 2005, brought online, operational since 2005, and being that Fayetteville PWC Public Works Commission, they really operate the majority of the infrastructure within the county. The county entered an agreement with Fayetteville PWC to actually own, or not own, apologize, to operate and maintain that system. So the county owns the sewer system. PWC helps to operate and maintain that system. And I will also point out, back in 2012, there was a study done specifically on the force main pipeline from the town of Falcon pump station, 8-inch force main that goes down into Wade. There was a study done on that just to evaluate operational challenges with that station, look at chemical feeds for odor control, and they identified air gap issues, air entrained in the force main, and recommended some additional air release valves to get that out of the pipeline, which I believe 6 of those were installed during that time. A little bit more information on the system. I've got some statistics here on the systems for each one of the towns. They should be in your packets there so you can read that. I'm not going to go through all of this here. I'd like to just bring up a map of the system here. So this is the entire Norcrest sewer system. Again, the town of Godwin, which has about 5 miles of gravity sewer within that, all goes to a pump station here, and then pumps down in a 6-inch force main all the way to the town of Wade. The town of Falcon also has a small gravity system here, 1 pump station, and a long 8-inch diameter force main that pumps down under I-95 and into Wade. And then the town of Wade has about 10 miles of gravity sewer. There are 2 pump stations in the town of Wade. Wade number 1 really collects most of the flow in that gravity, and then pumps over to a 15-inch diameter gravity sewer that goes to the Wade 2 pump station. Wade 2 takes that, pumps it down into PWC's system, and that's where PWC takes it over from there. So the scope of work for our project included starting out with some data collection, reviewing information, history on the project, looking at as-built drawings, previous study work, collecting all that, meeting with staff, meeting with PWC to understand some of the issues historically. There was some hydraulic modeling involved. PWC has a computer model of the sewer system for the whole county that they operate and maintain. We got a copy of that, looked at some of the Norcrest system in that. An asset management piece, which was really going out and inventorying what was there, size of all the sewer lines, how many manholes, how much pipe. And the real meat of the project was this lift station and force main evaluation, going out doing condition assessments to see what kind of condition the pump stations were in, actually putting some ratings to those, electrical analysis of them, and doing detailed hydraulic evaluation on the force mains themselves. We We also did wastewater flow monitoring, so we put meters into the gravity system at each one of the lift stations, so we could characterize what kind of flows are typically coming into that pump station, and also hopefully to capture, when there's big rainfall events, how much of that rain is actually getting into your system too, because that could be an issue. And finally, we wrapped it all up with a report and some recommendations. So a little bit of the results from that study, starting out with the condition assessment of the pump stations. As I said, we went out, looked at each one of these pump stations, looked at all the components from the building to the site to the pumps themselves, the wet wells, every single component there, and put a score to it of 1 to 5. And here you can see 1 being a very good score, 5 being a very poor score. And this summarizes some of the major component groups that we looked at for each one of the 4 pump stations. And really what I wanted to highlight here is the electrical was fairly highly rated at each one of these stations, and we'll touch on that in a little bit. And then also, out of the 4 stations, the Falcon pump station was one that kind of ranked up as the highest priority there. So, a little bit further results, we did go out, run the pump stations, do some testing to evaluate capacities that we're actually seeing. There's a design capacity when they initially design and install these pumps. So often that gets reduced over time, so we want to see where the pumps are actually pumping and compare that to what they were designed for. So this first table here gives you an idea of, on the left, the design flow rate, and in the middle column there, what we actually tested the pumps at. And then I'm just comparing here, what those 2 numbers look like side by side, so you can see reduced capacity at all of the stations, which is normal, as I said, over time, wear and tear, you expect some of that. But I've highlighted way number 2 and the Falcon pump station, because those are a little bit higher than we would normally see over this amount of time. So highlighted those there. And then further, mentioned the flow monitoring. So this is some of the flow monitoring results that you can also kind of compare with the pump test. This shows you under a normal day what kind of flows you would typically see going to that pump station. So you can kind of compare these to what the pumps are actually pumping, and those numbers look really good. No problems there. You can pump those flows okay. And then this is when we actually captured a big rain event. We had the meters out. We got a really good rain event, which is what you really hope for when you put your meters out. These are really the maximum flows during that day that we saw at those meters. So you compare this to what the pumps could actually pump, and we see a lot of these, especially in the Godwin and in the Falcon. These were the 2 that really, they're a lot higher than we would expect. So a lot of rainwater getting into those systems. A little bit more detail on the flow monitoring. To start with, I said we captured a really good rain event. This is, we got the meters in just before this big rain event. You can see this is over a 24-hour period. Longer than that, it was a total of over 6 inches of rain in that period. Generally, we do design sewer systems for rain events. We have what's called a design storm, and it's usually more like 4 3/4 of an inch. So this was bigger than what we would typically design a system for. So just for comparison, I want to bring that up. And then the results of that peak flow during this rain event are shown here. We calculate a peaking factor by comparing what the normal flows are to what that peak flow during the rain event is. And normally, somewhere in the 5 to 7 is a typical peaking factor. So way number 1, way number 2, those fall in that range. I've highlighted Falcon and Godwin again because those peaking factors are fairly high, meaning a lot of rainwater getting into the system. So moving on into the recommendations coming out of this. Really to start with, in year 1, we noted some of the capacity issues. In way number 2, it's not pumping near what the flow it should be. So the first recommendation is to really, in the first year, look at either replacing some of the internal parts of that pump or just fully replacing the pumps so you can get back to pumping what you need to be there. For Falcon, the force main there, as I mentioned, it's a really long force main. It's not very typical to see really long force mains like that. They create challenges, operational challenges. So we recommended some additional testing to kind of pinpoint where the issues are with that. I mentioned air getting into the pipeline. That's a big problem when you have big force mains that are up and down like that. So there's some additional testing where we can actually do inside the pipe, put it's called a smart ball inside the pipe, and it'll give us information about where those air pockets are. And we usually put more air on there, find ways to get that air out of the system. so that that Falcon pump station can really pump what it should be pumping. As I mentioned in the condition scores, all of those stations rank very high on the electrical. So the recommendation is to do some significant electrical improvements in year one. And the way these stations are configured, they're a building with a wet well where all the flow comes in, the pumps sit on top of that and pump it out into a force main. All the electrical, the generators are all inside that building. And really there's a lot of odor and gas associated with wastewater, and it creates a very corrosive environment. So really having that electrical inside the building with that is not ideal. And it can really cause problems over time and degrade your electrical systems. We've seen some of that at these stations. We've seen some of it with the SCADA. So really the recommendation there is to move that equipment outside. Some of the generators aren't even functioning right now, so get new generators and move your equipment outside. And then system-wide, I talk about, especially in the Falcon and Godwin, some rain that we see get. The recommendation there is to go out. You can do a little bit more metering on a smaller basis to figure out exactly where that rain's coming in, smoke testing, some other things. Also, you can put these inserts, these plastic inserts in the top of a manhole lid, and it'll keep the water from getting in. Amy and her staff have already done some of the smoke testing, so they're already looking into some of that. I think just continuing that on as a normal program is a good idea. Moving past year one into year 2 through 5, there, depending on what comes out of the additional study at the Falcon Force Main, there's probably some additional costs associated with getting that back in service, back operating like it should, either replacing or doing some maintenance on the existing air valves that are there. Excuse me. And just some regular cleaning inspection that could be a requirement once we get that in-pipe analysis. And then again, at all of the lift stations, the initial year of electrical improvements was to get most of that equipment outside of the SCADA system, which is what allows PwC to see what's going on with the pumps if they're on, or help them operate the pumps. That is also in need of replacement at all 4 lift stations. So the cost there is associated with replacing that at all 4 lift stations. And then again, just looking into evaluating that inflow and infiltration. That's the rainwater that gets into your system, and looking for ways to reduce that over time. Because the more you can bring that down, then you're not sending it into PwC system. It doesn't have to go into the treatment plant, and it'll reduce your cost on just what's billed from PwC. I've also included in here the same recommendations, just in a breakdown, a table for each one of the lift stations. So you should have that in your packet. You can kind of see, but these are the same costs that we just talked about for each one of the lift stations. Electrical at all of them, new generators. Some of the easements, some of the stations are very small sites, so if we move that equipment outside, we may need a little bit extra land there, so there's some costs associated with that. Wave replacing the pumps. And then lastly, the additional costs at Falcon for some of the testing, and then all of these upgrades to electrical, upgrades to the generators, the easements, and SCADA upgrades. So that's what I have for you today. That's a summary of our recommendations, and with that, any questions you have?
And any questions from the board? Yes, Commissioner Bruce.
I have 3 real quick ones. First of all, thanks for breaking that down. That was, instead of just all of a sudden showing us the whole thing and then say, here's Falcon Godwin Way, giving us the miles, the distance, and the numbers and everything was very helpful.
Yes, sir.
Are we at any capacity on any of them right now on tap-ons? I mean, how much in the future will this last?
No, really, if I can get back to it, the capacity of the stations is fine. It's really managing the rainwater that comes into the stations. On a normal, when you look at these normal flows, these are well within your design parameters, and you can grow within those.
Okay.
The problem is this rainwater and keeping that out of your system. So that's what really affects your capacity.
Okay, in the rain event thing, how far back have you monitored either seasonal, annual, or whatever you do as far as rain? How far are we going to go back and find that?
Yeah, PwC probably has some information on that, some rain gauges. We just looked at the event. So we installed these flow meters for 2 months. So we installed a flow meter for 2 months, and we looked at the rain data over that. We were lucky that we got that rain event to happen. But
is there anything we can do now to get us closer to the 6.5 capacity or expectation versus the one you said these were made or anticipated for 4.5 or 4.5? Is any of this going to be modified to get us closer to that?
It's not, the infrastructure is good, it's really managing this rainwater.
Okay.
That's where those huge peaking factors that I talked about, that's a function of all the rainwater that's getting into your system. So really trying to mitigate that is the best.
The rainwater runoff and flow, is that affected anything by reducing the ground cover by subdivisions, new roads, parks, anything like that at all, or does that matter?
Not likely. It's more a function of, if you've got manholes and they're low lying, they sit right next to roadside ditches.
Yeah.
Excuse me. They sit right next to the roadside ditches. So the roadside ditches fill up, it gushes into the manholes. Or if the joints in the pipe when it's built aren't real tight or they're starting to fail, they're getting loose, water gets in through those. People sometimes just connect like rainwater from their house drains into sewer. We see that sometimes in some stormwater or smoke testing, which is what Amy's doing, can identify some of those, or they just have a crack inside of a manhole, those kind of things.
Okay. Thank you again.
Absolutely.
Commissioner P.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I got a couple questions. What is typically the life, are these the original pumps?
Yes, sir, they are.
Okay, so they're 10 years old? 20 years old, 2002, 2005?
2005, yes.
2005.
Yeah, right.
Is that the normal, where?
25 years on these kind of pumps. A lot of it depends on how frequently they run. So that Wave 2 pump station, as I said, collects everything, sends it all to POC, so it runs a lot more than the other ones.
Okay.
So some of it's a function of how frequently they run, but 25 years.
Typically, what is the lifespan of the infrastructure of a sewer system?
Well, pipelines, plastic ductile iron pipelines can last 50 years, hundreds of years. So the lifespan of those are pretty long. The pump stations are much lower. And it's really about, maintaining them to keep them in that condition. That's the important part.
One of the things we hear from the utilities a lot of times is that if you can't get the density or the flow, that it causes problems within the system. And it seems like as Commissioner Booth said, there is adequate room to grow in these areas. Is the lack of flow causing any damage to the pump? Are we pumping them, the pumps pumping over what they should be doing, over being worked?
Not that I see. I think they're, just talking to POC and looking at the stations, I don't think that's an issue. I think they get plenty of flow so that they're operating frequently enough. They're not just sitting there, they're not running too infrequently or, there's definitely no cavitation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
So, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, the $685,000 that we moved from the Capital Investment Fund at your budget session Monday evening relates to the CIP first-year adjustments that's been recommended today.
Okay. Are there any other comments?
We already did it, so we don't have to do any more action today.
No, I was just
Okay.
trying to make sure to solidify that these two go together. The only other thing I would ask is that Mr. Walker come back to the podium, and there've been recent action by DEQ on the viable utility assessment. Mr. Chairman, you received a copy of that letter. It relates to Norcrest, and so we just want to, I asked Jermaine to be prepared to just say a few words to introduce some of the implications of this general statute. We're working with DEQ.
Thank you, sir.
So concerning the viable utility reserve program for potential distress units, we attended the training on Tuesday. Amy Cannon, Tracy Jackson, Amy Hall, and I. And for the most part, the overarching messaging on that was reinvestment into utility infrastructure. And they also discussed statutory educational requirements that are going to be mandatory for some county leadership and staff. And so the next steps with that going forward are asset inventory and assessment for all of our systems, and And as you can see, conducting the study of the Norcrest system actually puts us in a great position, great start going forward with that program.
Thank you. Any comments?
No, sir, we'll just keep providing additional information as we learn about this particular event with DEQ.
Thank you.
Are we under contract with PwC with this?
They're the operator. We own the system, but we contract with PwC to operate it and maintain it.
We have a long-term, or is it a revolving contract, or is there a deadline on the contract?
I believe there's an expiration. Amy, do you know the
There
date?
is an expiration, it has already passed, and we're now on a year-to-year type deal unless we request for it to be terminated.
So if I may, one of the conversations that we've had is once we do the improvements and maximize the operational performance, we've talked about doing a RFQ and seeing if there are other entities that may be able to operate and maintain it at a lower cost. And so we're going to go out for that, but we want to get the system operating at its maximum potential first.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Madam Manager.
Yes, sir. The next item is 3B. It's a presentation I know that the board's been waiting on, but this is an overview of the Intergov services, software, and citizen self-service. Today presenting, we have Keith Todd, our IT director, Ross Howard from Engineering and Inspections. And will anyone be here from the Health Department? Okay, great.
Okay, thank you, and good afternoon. We're actually very excited to be at this stage in the process. I'm going to present to you an update on the Tyler Intergov software project. Roughly 2 years ago, you approved us and kind of to move forward and proceed with a brand new land management software called Tyler Intergov. Now, Intergov, as a reminder, is just a software that provides our land management services, allowing for the management of permitting, permits, plans, electronic plan submittals, inspections, and code enforcement. It also allows us to really automate the processes. It greatly our handoffs from one section of plan inspection, environmental to others throughout the process. And for the citizens, through the citizen self-service, the CSS, that's notated here, it gives them a great sense of insight as to where their permits are in the process. It gives them the ability to apply and track their permits and their plans through an online portal. They can access to it anytime, thereby reducing the need to call and check on the status, as they can see that very quickly through the CSS portal, through the Intergov product. As a quick project status update, we've been challenged this year quite a bit through this project. It's been a very uncharacteristic project for us as far as implementation goes, because a great majority of this project was implemented during a great pandemic that we've all been faced with, and it also presented challenges to the project, such as having to remote work, having sessions instead of having face-to-face training, doing remote training. Through all that, I think the staff has been very resilient in how it's dealt with the project, and it's helped us to push towards and strive towards a go-live on June 21st of this year. And so, at this time, our staff are very active in our training. We're doing some refresher training currently, but more importantly, and probably more critically, we're also going through a UAT process, which is our user acceptance testing process, parallel testing, to kind of flush out any kind of possible issues to ensure that the system's ready for a true go-live date. And so we are working through that system today, and also trying to establish that we have a system that meets our functional requirements set out over 2 years ago through our RFP process, to ensure that what we're getting is also being delivered to us through that process. And so one thing that I will note on the June 21st date is also, as you are very aware probably, is that we're also going live on that June 21st date with our Cumberland County NC.gov, our county's new webpage. And so we're excited about that. I know that I was leading that charge in the meeting with 21st. And so now I'll turn it over to Ross Howard to speak to some of the key benefits realized through the project and to the staff and citizens.
Thank you, Keith. Good afternoon. So as he said, very excited about this product coming online. As a matter of fact, I just met with some of the leaders of the Home Builders Association of Cumberland County. They are hyper excited about all of this. So for the employees, I can say that if you look at our process right now, we have a very linear process, meaning that you can't go through, to get here, you have to go through here, then you have to go to this body, then you have to go to this body, then you have to go to this body. So what this does now, and I know you can read all of this stuff, so I'll just give you the brass tacks out of all this, is that it will compress all of this down and make that a lot more horizontal, meaning that when you submit online to us, the staff will get a disbursement out to all of the major agencies, and we have a list that you wouldn't believe of how many agencies we have to send this out. It's not just internal agencies, but it's dispersed out to everybody out on the outside, DOT, DEQ, all the folks that have to be able to see it. So instead of a linear process, it becomes more of a, as I said, a horizontal process. It goes out all at one time and allows the pertinent staff members to insert their comments and their questions and everything like that as it's going, as it's submitted. So you don't have to go through a linear process, as I said before. So we're very excited. Close up some potential loopholes if we have. So for example, if we miss this person or that person throughout the process, I'm not saying that happens all the time, this shores that up because it all goes out of this and everybody sees the same information. So we're pretty excited about that. So for the citizens, which I think is the most important thing, is that from a citizen perspective, it's all about convenience for them. So for the most part, the citizen will be able to submit plans, will be able to pay, and will be able to see via their dashboard when they log into an account, they can be able to see everything, where they are in the process. If they see, for example, that there might be a problem in planning or environmental health or whatever, they can call that person directly and maybe work that out, or it sends them an email notification that shows what the issue is and allows them to be able to rectify it pretty instantly. So they don't have to wait a day or so in order to be able to get the reports out. So for the inspection staff, who is going to be out in the field, they can enter in their building inspection reports right there as they're doing it, and then so the builder and I'd say the owner and the builder, or whoever's on that account, can see the same information. Because a lot of times we get a lot of, well, the builder said this, and they said this, and this shores up a lot of that communication, so we're really excited about that. So, that being said, so the next steps that we're looking at, as Keith said, we're going through the UAT testing right now, so we're looking at through the end of this week. Monday, as he said, we're going into what's called parallel testing, so that means that people can come in and we're going in our current process while we're trying to, gently or gradually phase in the Intergov process. We've got about a week or two that we're going to try to be able to nuance that in and to try to work out as many bugs as we possibly can. And then I know that Keith is working for finance right now to be able to work on the online payment options, which will be linked to our website eventually, as he said, because they're both going live at the same time. And then, of course, we're working with the PIO office. Jared on salary staff has been very great about coming up with the communication plans to get the word out to the Home Builders Association and everybody else via the standard platforms that we use with the county. But, of course, we wanted to make sure that we had showed you this first before we started getting too involved with all of that. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer what I can, and Keith can try to answer any questions for that as well.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, that's the job.
This is going to be huge. This is going to be huge.
Yeah.
Is there any plan for other departments? I mean, right now, I know planning and inspections, and that's top of the chain, but other departments that they could utilize this type of, say, I'm thinking, taxes, I'm thinking animal services, I'm thinking health department, is there any chance of that too?
It's a tough question. We're definitely trying to, what we're trying to do with this project here was to, when we first looked at it, we looked at it from a planning inspection only, to be honest with you. And then as we looked at it in more depth, we started realizing, well, the way we can do so much more.
Right.
We came back to the board and presented to you those options, those opportunities. And so this does incorporate not only the planning inspections, but it's got some fire inspections in it as well. It's got some, roll it out, and also we're going to continue to look at how else we can do to also integrate with our new tax system as well, to help share some information. So we're in those conversations as well. That's going to be a second phase of this.
This is great. Polishing diamond on that one, but this is great. It's great.
Any more comments or questions? Thank you so much. Madam Manager, we're on item 4.
Yes, sir. We'll begin with item 4A. It's a resolution to establish a joint Fort Bragg and Cumberland County Food Policy Council. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce some of our staff members and the guests we have with us today. We have Martina Sconyers-Talbot. She is the grants manager at the Health Department and also the Triple P supervisor. We also have presenting today Captain Courtney Moore, and she is with the Womack Army Hospital. And we also have over here in the corner, Sheena Butler, who is a nutritionist at the Health Department. Welcome.
Hello, Cumberland County Commissioners and everyone else here today. Excuse me, my voice is kind of in and out. My name is Martina Sconyers-Talbot, and this here is Captain Courtney Moore. We're here today to talk to you all about the establishment of a joint Fort Bragg and Cumberland County Food Policy Council. So the Food Policy Council would be in support of the Healthiest Cities and Counties Challenge, which we refer to as HCCC. And this grant was funded by the Aetna Foundation, the American Public Health Association, and the National Association for Counties. The program supports communities that are changing the way they work together across sectors to reduce disparities in chronic disease outcomes. Here in Cumberland County, we were awarded a $100,000 grant, which splits into 2 years, so $50,000 each year, to address food insecurity and change the food access systems through the community engagement among Cumberland County and Fort Bragg residents. This is a collaborative effort between Cumberland County Department of Public Health as well as Fort Bragg Department of University of North Carolina at Greensboro. What is food insecurity? It is a state of being without reliable access to adequate, affordable, nutritious foods. And in 2018, here in North Carolina, we saw that our rates were higher in North Carolina than in the United States as a whole for food insecurity. And then when we look at Cumberland County statistics, there are about 56,000 residents who face food insecurity in our area, which is higher than the North Carolina rate. And when we look at food insecurity, there are approximately 19,000 children who are facing food insecurity in Cumberland County. The project is to advance health equity as well as improve access to foods that support healthy eating patterns. And some ways that we plan to do that is to establish a joint Cumberland County Fort Bragg Food Policy Council. We also plan to conduct food environment assessments of the community that include at least 3 policy recommendations. We also plan to implement at least 2 policy, system, or environmental priorities as identified by the local Food Policy Council once it's established. So on this project, we have been partnering with quite a few different partners across the area, and some of those are Womack Army Medical Center, Partnership for Children, Better Health, Alliance Health, Action Pathways, DSS, and Noonday Kitchen. And this is just to name a few. We have 2 subcommittees currently working as part of the grant, and these partners are part of those subcommittees. So I will now pass the presentation to Captain Moore, who will talk more about the resolution to establish the Food Policy Council.
Good afternoon. I'm Captain Moore. I represent Womack Army Medical Center. I am a dietitian in Nutrition Care Division. Today I'll be speaking about our Food Policy Council. So the Food Policy Council, it aims to address shortcomings in the local food system, as well as push for policy changes that will be made that will make healthy, nutritious foods more attainable for all residents. The Fort Bragg and Cumberland County Food Policy Council shall serve as an advisory board providing recommendations, and it is funded until June 2022 by the Healthiest Cities and Counties Challenge Grant. For the Food Policy Council duties and responsibilities, we're focusing on increasing accessibility to healthy, nutritious foods by identifying and recommending policy changes to Fort Bragg and Cumberland County leadership. We are focusing on incorporating health, equity, and sustainability considerations in policy processes and decision-making processes as it relates to food insecurity, decreasing the current number of adults and children that are facing food insecurity, communicating with the various food system stakeholders for their expertise, and also working to build a better sense of cohesion among food system workers. We're collaborating with the community food strategies to network with other existing food policy councils within North Carolina, and exploring ways to conserve local resources such as plants and soil, water, air quality, farming, and agricultural land, livestock, and capital. For membership for the Food Policy Council, it will consist of a maximum of 15 appointed members with a one-year term. These members should be appointed by the Cumberland County Commissioner Chair with guidance and approval from the Board of Commissioners. And we're also focusing on equity. We want to make sure that we have a diverse team that reflects the racial, economic, and geographic diversity of Cumberland County and Fort Bragg, including those who have also experienced food insecurity. So each member will be appointed to a one-year term, and there will be co-chairs, one from Cumberland County and the other one from Fort Bragg. There'll be members involved from the local farming and agricultural communities, also representing local education at the hospitals and also the local schools as well as the local universities. And there'll also be members from healthcare that work in the field of food access or within child and adult care, as well as members that work in local government. And then we'll make an active effort to also include members who do not work in local government. Meetings will be held on a quarterly basis, and there should be roughly 4 meetings a year. And there will be formal reviews conducted annually and revisions of the bylaws also conducted annually. That is our presentation. Any questions?
Thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions or discussions from the board? Commissioner Council.
I just had one, and that was the continuity of the council. I know this is 2 years, but I would hate to see everybody come off at the same time. Did I misunderstand that?
No,
Well, just, I don't want to do anything to mess it up because I like it.
okay.
But,
Right, so the way that we had worked it out was that the term end dates would be staggered, so there'd be at least 3 members on that board that are, that have been present for a length of time so that we have that continuity going. So there would never be somebody, there wouldn't be a whole new board at one time.
So you could provide for them to one-year terms, but they can be reappointed or reapplied.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
good.
that took care of it.
Commissioner.
We've talked about food insecurity quite a bit, but what is the definition of food insecurity, if you will? What's the premise of what we're actually asking, the benchmark that you were going by?
Well, food insecurity is not having access to healthy foods, and here in this community, as you said in the presentation, there are many children, around 19,000, who just don't have adequate food, healthy food items to choose from. And so the goal is really to reduce food insecurity here in the community so that everyone has access to healthy foods.
Yeah, it's very global, and what I was trying to drill down to is that food insecurity at home, is that food insecurity in the community, or is it food insecurity in some other manner? Because, you know, there are people who live in areas that don't have a lot of options for food, but, you know, they have the wherewithal to purchase food. I have the same concerns as Commissioner Council about your board. You're on a 2-year grant. You have 15 people at a 1-year term. And I noticed that none of, if I read it right, any of your board members actually from people who are experiencing food insecurity?
There's 3 openings.
Well, I saw that there were people, I know, I saw there were people that, was there any people on the board that, like, at-large people or from the community?
Yes, sir. So there can be, there's room for 3 members that are experiencing food insecurity.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that. Okay.
Okay, are there any more comments or questions? Madam Manager, direction, please.
Yes, sir. They are seeking for the board to move this resolution to the June 10th, June 21st Commissioners meeting as a consent item.
Is there a motion for that? Commissioner Council, is there a second? Commissioner Booth, thank you. All in favor?
Unanimous.
And
Thank you.
and Captain, would you like some candy?
Oh, sure, thank you.
I know it's a nutritionist, I didn't want you to think it was up here. I didn't want you to think it was up here beside me with all these crumbled wrappers.
Madam Manager.
Yes, sir. The next item is extension of the North Carolina 911 Board Grant. We have Mr. Gene Booth, our Emergency Services Director, here to present this item. But I thought, Mr. Chairman, after Mr. Gene Booth presents, Mr. Walker is here, and he could give an update to the board on the status of the Executive Place project, if you like.
That would be fine.
It's not here. It's the chair.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
As you know, November of 2019, the 911 Board provided the approval of $2.25 million towards our 911 center construction. That was for an 18-month period with an option to be able to extend it as we needed, as we know those things kind of vary in time. So we have asked the 911 Board for the extension. They provided us a grant agreement, extension to the grant agreement, and we're asking that, staff is asking that you put this on the consent agenda for June 21st and approval to allow Ms. Cannon to sign.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Available for any questions.
Yes, and thank you. Are there any questions?
Yep, sorry.
Commissioner Key.
This is the original 2-point-something million,
Yes, sir.
and we haven't spent any of that yet, or encumbered that yet?
No, we're just starting the construction process.
Okay. I've asked a couple times, and I was told that it was going to happen, but I don't know if it did. Have we applied for any other grants through E911 for particularly this center? I know that some of the surrounding communities have gotten some pretty substantial grants, not only through E911, but also through the legislature. One county that's contiguous to us had half the building paid for by grants, and that. Have we applied for any additional grants with E911?
Yes, sir. We did this year.
And
This is still in the process for review. We're scheduled to have a presentation within July.
Mr. Chairman, I can add to that
Yes, sir.
also that it may help. We've also applied in the recent past to Golden Leaf for funding for the EOC. They did come out, they did look at the facility, the current facility, and the proposed facility. They determined that there were other counties that had higher priorities based on hurricane damage, so we did not get funding for that. We are actively looking and applying for other federal level grants, state level grants, as those opportunities become available.
I appreciate that, sir. I appreciate that information. Madam Manager, you said that someone else was going to give us an update of what we
Mr.
had.
Walker's going to give an update on
Okay,
construction.
fantastic. Mr. Booth, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Commissioners, just quickly, the project is well underway. We've completed demolition, both exterior and interior demolition, and we've moved to the point now to where we're doing mechanical and electrical rough-ins. We've also located all the utilities. We're doing hydrant flow testing for the fire suppression system, and we've also already relocated a transformer, which was in after the fact incident that happened. So we're well underway, on schedule, and the project will be completed on time.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me ask you this before you sit down, sir. When you said the project is going to be on time, what time is that?
Well, we're looking at completing the construction portion at least by November, and then moving into the information systems portion to complete it no later than April.
Fantastic.
April of 2022.
22, correct.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if the board took action on moving the grant to the June 21st meeting.
Okay, is there a motion for that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Unanimous.
Fantastic.
Mr. Chairman, item 4C is the fiscal year 21 rural general public grant contract amendments for rides to vaccination sites. Mr. Ross Howard.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cannon. So if the board recalls, in about February of this past year, we had received some funding through this state DHHS, it's all tied to CARES, that came routed through DOT in order to be able to provide rides and to reimburse our providers to provide rides to vaccination sites. So that was in February. Being that this was a new pot or new streaming, a new pot of funding that was kind of outside of our typical operating budget, we were trying to figure out, it was new, it was kind of tossed to us, we're trying to figure out how we need to be able to use this. So what was ultimately decided around May-ish was that we had to do a contract amendment to the existing contracts in order to incorporate this money into those contracts, and so we can be able to pay our providers the invoices that have been submitted. So what this is, brass tacks, commissioners, is if you approve this, it would amend the contract. It would allow us to basically, after talking with the providers who are on board with this, is that this is June. What we would do, if approved, is that we would pay all outstanding invoices that are associated with this funding and for these trips all at one time in June. That would encompass, as I said, it was about $44,000. We've used about maybe half of that. So right now, we haven't gotten any strong word from DOT as to what we need to do with the money. We're making the assumption that any unexpended funds we have to get back to the state, but that's not 100%. So we're going to find out at the beginning of FY22 what the state wants to do with the money and how we need to handle it. But right now, we do have outstanding invoices that we do need to cover for FY21, so that's the reason I'm bringing it forward to the state.
Thank you, sir. Any comments or questions?
And I'm sorry, I should point out that we are trying to put this as a consent item for the 21st.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Booth.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the contract amendments as presented for the rides to the vaccination sites and pay the invoices that are outstanding, and move it, and if it's approved, to move this to the consent agenda for our next meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Booth. Thank you, Commissioner and Council. All in favor?
Unanimous. Rob's going to stay up for a few minutes. Item 4D is the Cumberland County Community Transportation System Safety Plan.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cannon. So I think a lot of you are familiar with this. This is kind of standard procedure. The state requires that the board adopt an endorsement of the safety plan for our transportation operations so we can apply for grants for the next year. So that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, I'll try to answer what I can. And I'm sorry, but we also want to put this as a consent on the 21st as well.
Mr. Chairman.
It's been properly moved by Commissioner Council, seconded by Commissioner Lancaster. All in favor?
Unanimous.
Unanimous.
All opposed? Thank you, sir. I think you have a couple more.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
4E is the fiscal year 2022 Community Transportation Services Contract Extensions.
Yes, so this is the standard contract renewals that we have for the wide breadth of our transportation providing, the services that we provide through our transportation contractors. When the RFP was released last year, we put in the RFP that we have the right to extend the contract up for 2 additional years. This is the first out of those 2 years. We took this to the Transportation Advisory Board in May, and they unanimously said that we needed to extend the current contracts as they stand. So the current rates are going to be the same. There's nothing changing. We're just going to move into the next fiscal year with the same contracts that we have right now per the TAB. So again, we're also asking that this be put on the consent agenda if the board seems fit for the 21st.
Okay, thank you, sir. Do I hear a motion? Second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Lancaster and Stewart, all in favor?
Unanimous.
Thank you so much.
Item 4F is the Federal Area Metropolitan Planning Organization Memorandum of Understanding update.
Thank you very much, Ms. Camden. Again, so as you know, the relationship between Fort Bragg and Fampo has changed quite a bit over the years. What we're finding in more modern times now is that we now start to have state roads that go through federal property, whereas before we didn't really have that type of relationship. So as a part of the changing dynamic that we have with these roads going through their property, both the Transportation Policy Board and the TCC, the Coordinating Committee, all of the boards associated with FAMPO have agreed by vote that FAMPO should be included as a voting member on the TPP, whereas before they were a non-voting member. So given that, we have updated the Memorandum of Understanding between ourselves, being Cumberland County, and FAMPO to include Fort Bragg, and also the signature pages include all of the associated towns that are represented throughout FAMPO's jurisdiction. So again, this would be considered a consent agenda item. We're requesting it go to the 21st as well as a consent item. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer what I can.
Thank you, sir. There, any questions or comments? If not, do I hear a motion?
Motion to move to the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Lancaster. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Stewart. All in favor?
Unanimous.
And thank you, Board.
So that ends the items related to transportation. The next item, there are actually 2 parts to revision and amendment of the Cumberland County Code of Ordinances. And it is to bring the ordinance into compliance with the newly adopted Chapter 160D state statutes. So A deals with Chapter 4 related to buildings and building regulations, and then B deals with Appendix B, Subdivision Regulations. Mr. Howard.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cannon. So, as Ms. Cannon stated, we're trying to hit 2 birds with 1 stone in this presentation. So if you guys recall, we had the zoning ordinance update that was a few months ago that was tied to the 160D statutes that the state says that we have to be able to implement. They had adopted it in 2020. They are giving us to July 1st of 2021 to have all of our ordinances updated. So we wrote the zoning ordinance. This board adopted that. Planning staff's been working with the legal office to update the building code. So Chapter 4 is specifically related to building inspections, related to the minimum housing code and the processes that are all involved with that. We didn't make too many terrible technical changes as far as the specifications for minimum housing in there, so but we did need to clarify some things relative to the building code, and I have Mike Naylor here was very instrumental with our staff to help go through that to make sure that we had tightened up a lot of that. The only technical thing that we are changing with this adoption is that the 160D now allows us to go into commercial property inspections. So this is not just a minimum housing, we've now included standards for non-residential as well, for commercial structures. So we have scheduled a public hearing on the next agenda as a part of this, so this would not be a consent item, it would just go forward as a public hearing on the 21st. The second part is dealing with the subdivision regulations. Those are also contemplated that we need to update as part of 160D. We made no technical changes to the subdivision ordinances The only thing that we changed in the subdivision ordinance was things related to definitions, which those definitions come straight out of the state statutes, and any cross-references now, we got rid of the 153A cross-references and replaced them with the applicable 160D cross-references in the state statutes. And we also added some conflict of interest standards for staff, which the state has now put in place that says what used to apply to voting members for conflict of interest now applies to staff members as well too, and we included that into the ordinance as well. So that is going forward as a text amendment, like we typically do any other text amendment, as case P2130, which will be, we are proposing to put on the uncontested agenda item along with all the other zoning matters that would be coming from the planning board. So I hope I explained that as clearly as I possibly can. If not, I'll try to answer any questions I have.
Commissioner Keith.
In all the time that I've been up here, I don't recall us ever seeing a commercial building coming out there. Is what you're saying, there wasn't any standards before for commercial?
No.
There was not?
Not in our ordinance, no.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to take a little bit deeper look at it because, I mean, this is something brand new. This is a big change, right? Well,
I mean, like, we didn't have new standards for commercial structures. It just gives us the authority to look at commercial structures if we find one that's dilapidated or something that's deteriorated.
I understand that. But does commercial mean the zoning? Or does it mean it was built, we rezoned a piece of property that may have a dilapidated house on it, is that considered then commercial, if it's commercial zoning? It's rhetorical. The next question is, what about multifamily?
That would be tied in with this as well too.
With commercial?
Yes, I believe the building code does not.
You're talking about, are you talking about minimum housing or building code? Which one are you talking about?
No, so like the building code is separate, so this is just our minimum standards for occupancy. So we're not addressing the building code in any of this. So,
So I want to know, is this allowing somebody, an inspector, to go into a apartment complex and say, we don't think that this meets minimum standing code, and then that be an infraction?
We've always had that authority under the minimum housing code.
But I've never seen multifamily done.
Well, I don't think we have a whole lot of multifamily that we deal with.
I don't think we've had any.
We've had complaints.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? If not, can we get a motion?
Yes, that's no further.
Thank you, Commissioner Lancaster. Is there a second? Commissioner Council, thank you. All in favor?
Voting in favor, Commissioners Lancaster, Council, Chairman Evans, Commissioner Stewart. Voting in opposition, Commissioner Field.
Thank you so much. We can continue it on.
Now we're going to have Jermaine up for a little bit. Starting with item 4H, this is a request to initiate a preliminary engineering report for sewer to the Shaw Heights community. Mr. Walker.
So Commissioner Lancaster's put me on a pitch count. So, approved on-call list, directed by the board to extend sanitary sewer lines through Shaw Heights. And this preliminary engineer report is a collaborative effort between community development and the Public Utilities Department. So MKR is attached to the proposal. It's in your packet. Funding is available via community development funds. And the next steps taken if the board chooses to move forward with the PER will be to approve the contract with MKR, and which will be presented at a future meeting. So staff is seeking feedback and direction from the Board of Commissioners regarding moving forward with the PER, and also just keeping in context that applying for future grants, performing the PER would greatly fortify our position in doing so.
Okay, sir, and thank you. But if you could you explain that in layman's terms to what's happening over in Shaw Heights with this for our listening audience?
Well, so with Shaw Heights, a large number of the residential areas, they're on septic systems. So at the time of the report, it's the only data I was able to pull recently, at least 20 septic tanks have already failed. So the Public Health Department requires that bordering a watershed, you should have at least 40,000 square feet between the watershed and septic systems. And so in order to increase the viability of the neighborhood, we definitely, well, I don't want to misspeak, but it should be strongly considered that public sewer be instituted in that area. A couple things to take into account. If you increase those trunk lines, then we'd be able to extend sewer from Shaw Road to Gregory Street, Shaw Road to Gardenia Street, Cross Creek up to Hibiscus, and essentially incorporate the entire neighborhood on public sewer.
Thank you so much. So we're looking at a great improvement there in Shaw Heights. And so I think it's a big step and an important step for us to take. Thank you so much for taking the time to explain to us. Is there, explain to the listening audience as well, is there a motion for this?
I'll be happy to make the motion. I do have a question. So what you're asking for is basically $50,000 to do the survey, right?
Correct.
And then in that time, we'll be able to get a number of what it's going to take to get sewer out of Shaw Heights.
To connect all the residents to the sewer trunk lines and to install the laterals.
And having that in place is going to make us in a good position to maybe apply for some grant funding for that.
Correct.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion, we accept the proposal by the county engineer on the Shaw Heights preliminary study.
Thank you, Commissioner Keith. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Stewart and Commissioner Council. Thank you both. All in favor?
That's a heavy item.
Thank you so much, sir.
We're going to let him stay up there a few more minutes.
Okay.
Item 4I
Keep bringing us good news. You can stay there forever.
is the Board of Commissioners meeting room update. As you may recall, this was sent to the May meeting and pulled off the agenda, and the request was made for it to come back here for additional discussion. I've asked Mr. Walker to give a brief update about where things stood at the last agenda session.
So with the board's permission, if I can just recap this time. So in the April agenda session, the engineering department was instructed to conduct a site visit with several of the commissioners in assessing the viability of the historic dollars, but also keeping the understanding, maintaining the understanding that those costs did not include elevator modernization, which we adopted in the FY22 budget, second floor bathroom renovations and ADA upfits, the addition of an executive meeting room, and technology infrastructure improvements to include upgrading the service panel, electrical service panel to the building. So a conceptual design will allow the commissioners to understand all of these related building renovation costs, in addition to the $2.57 million that Wooten proposed initially in April when they originally came before the board. And so the cost associated with this expanded scope design is $4,775. And if the commissioners agree to move forward, staff is seeking guidance and also recommending that it move forward to the June 21st Board of Commissioners meeting as a consent item.
Thank you. Quick question. The figures that you gave, that was only in association to the courtroom that we're renovating for our meetings, correct? and also the surrounding area on that one particular floor. Is that correct? As far as, okay. So it's just that one?
Just that one room. And so the expanded concept design would allow us to capture the other costs associated, which is plumbing system upgrade, which is the creation of male and female restrooms on that hall, which would include, once again, the executive meeting room and all of the technology infrastructure improvements.
Okay. Madam Manager, let me ask you this. As far as the entire courthouse?
Historic courthouse?
Yes, the historical courthouse being renovated. Can we have that done? I'm sure we can.
We would need to get an assessment to determine what the cost would be. And you're talking about upgrading it.
Yes.
Certainly, if that's the board's desire, we would need to expand the scope of Wooten's contract to look at the entire historic courthouse and not just keep it limited to the meeting room and the executive meeting room.
I think that if we're going to do it before we make a move on this motion, that we'll probably entertain a motion to have the whole assessment done for the entire courthouse, and they can come back with that, with the whole assessment. Yes?
I was going to ask a question. Would the renovation, the remaining portion of the historic courthouse be for the offices as they are today? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. We're going through a feasibility study right now of looking at a governmental services building for efficiency for our citizens, having the tax office together, having zoning and environmental health and permitting all in one building. And so the thought process that we've discussed before is trying to have a consolidated services center, and planning and inspections would be one of those departments that would move, as well as public utilities where people come in and pay their utilities. So I guess my question is, if you're going to renovate the rest of the building, would that be a foregone conclusion that we wouldn't include planning and inspections and public utilities in a general government services building?
Jermaine, I think they need you. We need the county engineer, we got a leak.
Okay.
Tracy's going to take care of it. Jermaine, you sit at the podium.
Yes, Amy, and state that again, please, because whenever that occurs.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I apologize.
That's okay, that's okay.
So I guess my question would be, is if you go ahead and renovate the other rooms, the other floors, would it be a foregone conclusion that we would not be moving planning and inspections and combining it into a general government services complex for the convenience of citizens? I'm just throwing that out just as a reminder.
Okay, so the question that you're presenting now is that the building that you're talking about building, to include the planning, the other governmental building that you're talking, the annex, right?
We've talked about, in this feasibility study, one of the options is to combine citizen services, community development, tax, mapping, environmental health, where you get a septic tank permit, where you can just go in one building from step to step. So I'm just reminding you that's one of the things that we're studying now. I'm not trying to change, if that's what the board wants to do, I'm just reminding you of the scope of the study that is being let soon.
Okay. Are there any comments from Commissioner Booth?
Thank you. Just as one of seven, my vision was to just keep, it's such a historic building, was just to keep it maybe for the meeting areas. Maybe there is, I can't think of a department, but maybe there's something it would not conflict with it being generally the people's building. I don't see it. I saw the governmental building as just that, streamlining, cost-effective, making a one-stop go place somewhere else. I wasn't seeing planning, inspecting, septic permits and everything over there in that building. And I don't know if anybody else was, but I was looking at it as, well, in fact, Mr. Adams, I'm sure, was a little concerned about, like when this building was made, there was 5 county commissioners, now there's 7. And he always points out about his office. And so I was just, if we do 7 over there, maybe we should do 9, just in case down the road, it becomes, it becomes a fact that the board votes itself larger, or something that, but I agree with you. I didn't see that as being, business.
Yes,
Business and checkbooks and permits and surveys and all that stuff. I saw that as a separate freestanding building where it would be a one-stop thing, get on the elevator, go up and down, do your taxes, get your permits, file your plat maps and all that stuff somewhere else.
I was just trying to clarify my
Well,
understanding.
I'm with you on that understanding,
Okay.
as being a separate building.
Yes, sir.
I don't think there's enough room to do all that over there.
Any other comments or questions for Mr. Council?
I urge us to be very cautious with this, please, because it is not, the building is not handicap accessible. It's not very easily converted to make it what did I say, handicap?
ADA compliant.
Yeah.
There you go, that's the phrase.
And I'm just wondering if we can do all this work at one time and make it make sense, Amy. Because you don't have parking over there. You can only get a half of a woman in a bathroom. You don't have, well, I kind of fill up a chair. There are a lot of needs. I didn't find out until, not that I'm old enough to have it, but knee surgery,
Yes, ma'am.
that I had to go down, up, and around. And I also had to have assistance. I think that what we need for technology is going to cost much more than we are thinking about. And I want to see one big plan to plan for the year 2050 and not patch up 2021. I'll go along with what the 7 vote for, but know how I'm thinking.
Yes, Mr. Key.
I'm not the same thing. Okay, couple things. We had talked at one time that one of the ideas for expanding the commissioner's room was for the ability that if something were to happen again, we could allow for social distancing and keep on. Just by that itself allows us to be a little bit flexible with some funding on how we can do it. In that building, we are consistently, year after year, this year, we're putting, Jermaine, was it $30,000 into the elevator?
FY '22, $250,000.
Oh, I'm sorry, $250,000. So we've been piecemealing it as we've been going. I think a couple years back, they did the ADA compliance with the zigzag switchback. But it's a beautiful building. 25 years ago, was it 25? At the 250th anniversary, the commissioners voted to put a lot of money in that building.
He's out of order every time he
And
comes.
the only commissioner that was still there was Miss Council at that time, who was on the plaque, was voting for it. I pulled the minutes. And the trick to this, though, is to, looking from a position of the citizen, if we stay in this building and we renovate this building, commissioners are going to be displaced for at least 9 to 12 months while they're redoing the building downstairs. We may have to meet up here, which gets a whole nother set of challenges that we have to do with the citizens coming in and how to speak in public hearings. If we were to decide to move over into the other building, it could be one day here, the next day we're moving straight over. And if any of you have not been on the 4th floor of that building, it is a museum. It's not the best museum in the world, but it is, you walk back in time about 50 years. And I believe that it is a place where citizens can go and see Cumberland County. Preferably, I don't know how management feels about this, but I agree with you on planning inspection should be in an organism where customers can come in. You know, the management staff would be a good place to be over there where they're not really, there's not a whole lot of traffic coming in, and that alleviates some of the parking. Yeah, the parking, and plus on Monday mornings, we don't have to wait on the elevator that long. No, but I would encourage you to really look at, the building needs to be repaired. We're putting it in the budget anyway every single year. And with ARP funding come around now, you'll never have an opportunity to put a building, to allow for social distancing, to allow for ADA compatibility like you can right now. So that was my pitch. Thank you.
And thank you, Commissioner Keith, and thank you, sir, for your presentation. This is a conversation that's going to be ongoing, but I hope it's not ongoing too long, because if we're going to do a building for an annex, I'm going to say without a better choice of words, if we're going to do that, we need to do it. And if we're going to do what we say we're going to do for the old courthouse, have our chambers there, we need to do it. And I brought this up, and thank you for bringing it up, and it allowed me to bring this up so that we can talk about it. We need to talk about it and move on with it. We need to do that. Again, thank you so much. What, we need to take action now, Madam
I
Manager?
think the question we have is, do you want to go ahead with this contract expansion with the Wooten Company to get that additional cost for what we had originally envisioned, the meeting room that goes with the technology, the executive meeting room, and the restroom upgrades?
Let's see, we have a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion. We allow the design group, but in addition, that they also provide a design group and an estimated cost for renovation of the building, like you asked.
Is there a second?
Yes.
We will probably have to come back with an adjusted cost.
Yeah, well, I understand that. I understand that.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Is that unanimous?
It was.
That is unanimous.
I tickled her to make her.
I tell you what, you all do a lot of touching over there. So,
Item 4J is amendment to the flood damage prevention ordinance.
yes, ma'am.
Cumberland County participates in the National Flood Insurance Program. This allows us to compete for funding for flood damage from FEMA. And so currently, the county's flood damage prevention ordinance does not include an automatic adoption clause, which means anytime that there are updates to the flood insurance maps or any firms that have to be adopted, we have to make those changes via public hearing. By adopting the language for auto-adoption, this allows us to auto-adopt future flood map revisions and flood insurance studies by reference, and would eliminate the requirement for public hearings to formally adopt maps or revise the ordinance.
Okay, are there any comments or questions?
And we'd like this to be a part of the consent agenda on the June 21st.
Thank you so much.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Unanimous.
Item 4K, Mr. Chairman, is the Judge E. Maurice Brazel Courthouse switchgear bid award and associated budget ordinance amendment.
So, back in September of 2020, it was discovered that the main switchgear of the courthouse needed to be replaced, and this was discovered after some arguing when a new generator was in place. And so, in December of that year, the county contracted a Progressive Design Collaborative for the switchgear replacement. And the original estimation for that work was $270,000 in FY '21. Of that original amount, $16,000 has already been encumbered for design and bid advertising, leaving a total of $254,000 left. So in April of 2021, we solicited bids for the switchgear replacement, and the bids came in. The lowest bid was $454,000 by J.L. Gray. So they won the bid, leaving us a delta of $200,000. And that associated cost, it was discovered that the original conversion package was not going to be as compatible as originally thought, and also that 100 foot of bus duct had to be replaced. And so the bus duct is a conductive material that runs the vertical length of the building. It's at a higher amperage, and it allows you to tie in your service panels on each floor through step-down transformers to power the floors more efficiently. And so, taking all that in consideration as a project constraint, having to do the project over a holiday weekend because of operational considerations, because we can't shut the entire courthouse down for a week. Those are the costs that the contractor proposed. And so if the board chooses to accept the bid award, we also request that budget ordinance amendment B210054 for the additional $200,000 be granted, and this be moved forward as a consent agenda item for the June 21st Board of Commissioners meeting.
Commissioner Booth.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the switchgear bid award for the courthouse building to Brett as low responsible bidder, and this be forwarded along to our our next consent agenda, along with the amendment B210054.
Thank you, Commissioner Booth. If there's no questions or comments regarding this, can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Item 4L is a change order for the Law Enforcement Center elevator modernization and associated budget ordinance amendments, B210208, B210-171.
Thank you, Ms. Candy. So with this project, this is an FY19 CIP project, but the great news is it's nearing completion. On November 18, 2019, the Board of Commissioners approved a project contingency of $100,000 for this project. We've already consumed through 4 change orders, a total of $98,825 of change orders, and we are requesting an additional $33,336 for 2 additional change orders. Those change orders are waterproofing and hydrogrout injection for the elevator shaft for elevator number 2, which is change order number 5, and the tying in of security cameras into emergency power for the elevators, which is change order number 6. And we want this, if approved, budget ordinance amendments B210208 and B210171 accepted and placed on the June 21st Board of Commissioners agenda as a consent item.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? If not, can I get a motion?
Motion approved and
Chairman, move these forward to the June agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Lancaster, and thank you, Commissioner Keefe. All in favor?
Unanimous.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, that ends Mr. Walker's items, and now we'll move to item 4M. It's an amendment to the purchasing policy, and we'll ask Ms. Vicki Evans to come forward and present this item.
Good afternoon, Ms. Evans. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. So for this item, we also have Chris Carr from the County Attorney's Office who will help answer any questions if we have questions. We've updated the purchasing policy. We work together. So the updates will allow for greater efficiencies and revise some unclear language. We also want to implement a recent change allowed within federal procurement guidelines. And there was also a request from Mr. Chairman to change the order of approval on contracts to allow for legal sufficiency to occur first. And so all of those changes are included within the policy that's marked up in the attachment that was provided within the agenda. I have included language off to the side that describes why we're requesting the changes that we are. So there's a couple of items that I'd like to cover specifically. In section 3.2, we're requesting to increase the purchase order threshold from $1,000 to $5,000, which will allow for greater efficiencies and in the amount of time spent on getting quotes and actually having to enter a requisition and tracking that all the way through. That amount change will also match the contract threshold requirement of $5,000 as added into the second paragraph in section 3.7. There is, and actually I have a request to change and make an edit to the edits that I made. So if you'll go to the fourth paragraph under section 3.7, in the very last sentence, the last sentence, it says, any delegation of authority to execute contract changes to engineering and construction contracts must be stated in writing within the original contractual agreement.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm trying to follow you. You're in the last paragraph of 3.7?
It's the second last.
Okay.
It's the last sentence in that second last paragraph in 3.7.
Okay.
Okay, so we want to remove that sentence. And so in preparation for the training that we're planning for departmental staff, we heard from the county attorney that we don't really need that language because it's already a standard. It's already required with another standard, and so we don't really need the board to act on that particular sentence. And so, do you all have any questions, or do you want me to take you through any of the changes?
Commissioner Keefe.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of wisdom in bringing it up to 5,000. It's just in today's world, efficiency is. I have a question though on the local purchasing. I know that we had gone over this, and for anybody that's following this, it is item 3.0, 3.1. The second paragraph says, local vendors or suppliers shall be those who demonstrate that they pay business, personal, or real property taxes and are either self-employed residents of Cumberland County or employ at least one resident of Cumberland County as an employee or officer of the contracting business. It seems very broad, because I don't know business personal, or I know if it's real property taxes, it could be their home. So the idea was that it wasn't somebody who was just a representative of a larger company that was maybe in another state or even another country. But as it reads right now, if one person who gets a check from that company pays taxes on their own personal home, and they're working out of their PIN, they would qualify, is that correct?
I'm sorry.
The business personal property has to be listed separately. It's the business equipment that a company uses to conduct business. It's not real estate, because a lot of companies are renting office space or renting a warehouse.
All right, I understand. So it has to be a separate business tax?
Business personal property, yes, sir.
So just getting your own personal tax, personal property tax doesn't work? Okay, all right.
Any other questions or comments?
I'm okay with that.
If not, is there a motion?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Keys and Commissioner Booth, first and second. All in favor? Thank you, Board. Madam Manager, item O, I believe.
We're actually in.
And?
Yes, sir. It's the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services lease for training space located at the Department of Social Services. Assistant Manager Jackson will present this item.
Thank you, Ms. Gannon. Board, the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services has a lease with Cumberland County so that the state staff can provide training. This is local and regional training to DSS employees that may come from Cumberland and surrounding counties. This lease has been in place for close to 15 years, and the lease rate has not changed during that time. DHHS recognizes this and has offered up a 3% increase in the lease rate, taking it from $13 a square foot to $13.39 a square foot. Staff has reviewed existing leases with other state agencies and noted that probation and parole pays $15 a square foot at 412 Russell Street. Staff is requesting permission to negotiate a lease rate of up to $15 a square foot with the state and bring this item back to the board prior to the expiration of the lease.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Questions?
Any questions or comments? Can I get a motion? So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Unanimous.
Thank you, Commissioner Lancaster and Stewart and Board. Madam Manager.
Yes, sir. This is an item request to increase the age in the pre-charge misdemeanor diversion program. I believe we still have with us Ms. Nichelle Gaines, who is over the misdemeanor diversion program as well as our JCPC coordinator. You may recall that we have a partnership with multiple agencies throughout the community, and the purpose of the misdemeanor diversion program is to divert those first-time arrests or citations of 16 or 17-year-olds for misdemeanor charges so that they don't have a charge that carries through for life, that prevents them and creates obstacles or challenges that are difficult to overcome. And so we've had the program for about 5 years, and it's been a successful program. You may recall in 2017 that Senate Bill 257 was passed, and it's better known as Raise the Age. And it raised the age of juvenile offenders for nonviolent crimes to age 18. And that actually became effective and put in place December 1st, 2019. So due to the legislation change, the MDP program and all of the partners here are requesting approval to increase the age from 16 to 17-year-olds participation to ages 16 through 21. This would allow younger adults to be diverted for the first time misdemeanor offenses and prevent those long-term challenges. And so we're asking that the board consider this item to be placed on the consent agenda June 21st. And if you have any detailed questions, Ms. Nichelle Gaines is the expert. I am not.
Are there any detailed questions or comments?
We'll answer any of them.
Are there any comments or questions? If not, I have one. I would like to say I'm very grateful to see this. It's going to benefit a lot of young people in our community that may have made some missteps in life, and it would affect them for the rest of their lives. And so I'm very proud and pleased at what you're doing to assist these individuals that made those missteps. I am very grateful. Personally, I'm very grateful. And I'm sure the board is too, so can I get a motion on this?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Unanimous.
Thank you.
The next item is an interlocal agreement with the city of Fayetteville to install a sidewalk at North Regional Library, and the county attorney, Mr. Moorfield, will present this item.
Welcome, Attorney Moorfield.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is an item that was requested by the Fayetteville Cumberland County Liaison Committee at their April 16th meeting. And I prepared the interlocal agreement that's attached. It has a couple of blanks in it because although the Liaison Committee said they were doing it, they didn't say where they were doing it. They went from those two streets. But the city has approved that draft agreement, and staff indicates that the city council will consider this on June 28th, I believe is the date they told me. And the blank line there for the street it's actually MacArthur Street. And it's a 6-foot wide sidewalk, about 400 feet long. So that explains why the cost is as much as it is. It's a cost share arrangement with the city estimates it to be in the range of $16,000 to $25,000, and it'll be split equally by the city and county. It would be, we're giving the city only a temporary construction easement to install it. They have designed that, and I just got the drawing for that Tuesday. And it would be owned by the county, it'd be the county's responsibility to maintain in conformance with the city sidewalk maintenance standards, and that's all financial terms. And I actually have the other documents that are needed for the board to consider it. If I complete it, if the board so wishes, it can be placed on the consent agenda for June 21st with all the documentation, and it will be finalized.
Are there any comments or questions? If not, can I get a motion? Commissioner Moose.
I have kind of a question and then my motion. Anybody who could slide in the repairing of the Maiden Lane Library parking lot?
Well, they're not going to.
With the city of Fayetteville, maybe they won't read it.
But
Maybe they won't read it, they'll just.
It's going to work out.
All right, in that regard then, I move that we approve and place on the consent agenda the interlocal agreement with the city of Fayetteville for the installation of sidewalk at the North Regional Library.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Booth, Commissioner Council. All in favor?
Unanimous.
Thank you, sir.
Item 4Q is request from the Cumberland County ABC Board to increase the salary of the general manager above the statutory limit. Mr. Moorfield.
Again, Commissioners, the Board of Commissioners has to approve the ABC granting a salary to its general director that's above the statutory limit, which is set by statute. I put that information in here. The statutory limit currently now is 128, 125, and they're asking to increase the salary to 150,000. They provided a backup, which I have attached. We'd be glad to answer any questions about it if to document the request. But again, the board will have to approve that from the that.
Any questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner.
How long has that statute been in place, the 128 being the cap? I mean, is it something that was just addressed in the last session, or has it been around since 1812?
It's been around a long time, but it's updated. I think the last update was 2017. It's a little ambiguous. That is the statutory salary. There's other compensation on top of that. That's not salary.
Any other comment?
So on your list you gave us with those base pays,
I don't know which you talk about.
the one that's attached on the,
That was provided by the ABC board.
so we
I
don't
mean, it's
have,
not, the salary is what the statutory restriction is for the general director of the ABC board. the other compensation to clerks of courts is through the judicial system, it's a different thing. This is the 128, 125 figure is the General Assembly statutory limit for this position without approval of board commissioners.
But to follow on, so what you're saying is at least 4 or 5 other ABC boards or commissioners, well, maybe town councils, I don't know.
The list that was provided, where it says general manager, salary, top sales board.
Right.
That was provided by the ABC board, and that appears to be a listing of the ABC board general director salaries for those ABC boards.
So another board of commissioners probably had to approve that because it's against.
Yeah, right now, the maximum is the 136.80, I think it's 136.88 is the maximum that can be paid in any county right now. Without board commissioner approval, that's why it's happening to you.
Right.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
And, as far as the salaries now, what are they getting? As far as the board members and as far as the general manager is concerned?
From the operations of the ABC system.
Excuse me?
From the operations.
No, I didn't ask you that. I'm asking what was it? What's the amount? Sir?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
That's okay, that's okay.
The current salary income is 128, 125 for the general record, for the ABC.
What is it, 128,000,
$128,125.
$128,000 for the general manager?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do you have, and thank you, do you have what the board members are getting?
No, sir, I don't have that.
Okay. But the increase will go to what?
100, they're asking for an increase to 150.
For the general manager?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so the request does not include the board members?
No, sir.
Okay, just
the general manager.
Fantastic.
Ask for a 20% increase.
What was that?
20%
For
increase.
the general manager? Well, yes, Commissioner Booth.
Are the other things that you were talking about, in addition to not just the statutory salary limit, are those controlled also by the county commissioners, or does the board just do it? Like a travel's license, or, you know?
The board, the ABC board has the authority to control the salary to their general director in this county of 128, 125. The salary does not include any other, like health insurance and that sort of stuff. Actually, my understanding of I think more in detail, because I don't get any questions, but my understanding is the general manager will get the same benefits as all employees of the system, which is pretty typical. When I say benefits, if there's a 401k contribution or health insurance, whatever everyone gets, it would be the same for the ABC employees.
Okay, well, do they or we, or at their recommendation, we control anything like a car allowance or gas allowance, or Mr. Hughes shaking his head?
The only thing the Board of Commissioners must consent to is this salary over in this county, 128, 125. That's the only thing you have control over.
You're like the school board.
Okay. Yes,
So I
Commissioner.
guess what we're saying is, and having been the liaison for a while, within their own budget, we don't really dictate anything. They just write us a check at the end of the year for whatever, correct?
This is the only thing that the Board of Commissioners must get your consent for. Increase in the salary by that amount.
Well, we approve the travel policy annually.
I think they actually asked to go use the same policy we have. Yeah, that was.
Commissioner Council.
Has the contribution to the county increased?
You mean the profit? Yes, it's increased.
Oh, yeah.
It's increased consistently for the last few years.
Where?
It's increased consistently for the last few years. I think if you look at the table above that salary, the gross sales figures are set out there in 2016.
Oh, I see.
It's gone from 32.8 in 2016 to 45.5 last year.
And you know what, and I've happened to sit in the boards, a couple of board meetings as the liaison at this time, and profits listening to them, there has been a great increase in profits from the various ABC stores around here.
I know they work hard. I know there has been an increase. I think I was a member for 6 years or something like that of the ABC board. So
Hey, I tell you what, just for,
there you go.
let's go ahead and make a motion, and I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Second.
Is there money in their budget?
Vote against it, and vote for it.
And we cannot increase board members' compensation.
I would have to look, I wouldn't tell you without looking at the statute. I didn't prepare for that question. There's no request here for, this is the only request that you have today.
Well, and that's the reason why I was asking about board members, because at the last meeting that I had attended, they talked about the increase for the general manager as well as board members. And so I just wanted to make sure that the board members were not included in this, so that's why I was asking you that.
You're correct, they're not included in this.
Okay. We have a first, motion and a second.
Seem fair, but okay.
What seemed fair? That the board members?
I'm gonna shut up.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Voting in favor, Commissioners Lancaster, Council Keith. Voting in opposition, Chairman Evans, Commissioner Booth, Commissioner Stewart. Does not pass, no vote.
So will it still go to the, I think it's the first time we've never had one of that pass.
This is the first time this happened in the
Yeah.
session.
So will it go to the regular board?
Under the rules that you have in place for the conduct of your business, it will not move forward.
Oh.
Madam Manager, next item of business, please.
Yes, sir. That brings us to the item that I asked to be added. It is item 4R. I'm going to ask our county engineer to present this item. We do have the registered deeds, Mr. Warren, with us, and this is about a request for a new vault doorway. Mr. Walter.
Good afternoon once again, Commissioners.
Long time no see.
Long time no see. So what we have here before you is a project proposed by the Register of Deeds. And what they're looking to do is creating a vault opening and a concrete masonry unit wall, which is this wall, which is directly across from the magistrate's office. And directly on the western side of the Register of Deeds vault. During periods of peak foot traffic, the current entrance does have the potential to create a bottleneck effect. And so taking a look at the project, we estimate somewhere around 45 days to complete the project, if approved. And then this process would require a demolition take place after hours due to noise, dust, and safety implications. And we'd also have to add some increased measures for containment and security after hours because we have to secure that area once the courthouse closes. We've received initial estimates averaging around $62,000. That includes design and contingency. But what it doesn't include is the replacement of this terrazzo floor, because unfortunately this building was built in 1978, and so it's very difficult to find that floor, so we'd have to do some type of finished concrete or some type of transition, floor transition that would still be deemed aesthetically pleasing. So as a previous direction, that I understand regarding building projects requested by officials in the Judge E. Maurice Braswell Courthouse, we'd have to get permission to make any significant changes to walls and any type of related fixtures. And so just asking if the commission desires to move forward with the project of creating a new vault doorway and providing some level of funding yet to be determined for the project. One thing I'd like to caveat, though, is the Register of Deeds has proposed to utilize his own funding up to half of the proposed cost for the project.
Are there any questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Booth.
Is the one where it says exterior wall, is the door access going to be about where those chairs are? Is that the plan?
Actually, yes.
Okay. There's a steel door, I think, that's in there that, I think it's only for fire or emergencies or something. I don't think people walk into the clerk's office, take the left and go in your back way, do they? Okay. In the next series of, there you go.
Yes, sir.
At the end of the hallway, you're looking at that almost like from,
So in relation to the diagram, this door is located here. This wall unit actually covers this door.
from the inside.
From the inside.
Yes.
So if you're coming in and you make the right-hand turn past the service desk in the Register of Deeds, this is what you would see when you walk through the initial doorway. And then this is the perspective of what it would look like from the hallway into the clerk of court's office. And we would put in a similar type door, double door, 3 by 6 foot by 8 inches with a glass transom, overhead lighting, pretty similar to this door here, doorway right there.
Can I ask the Register of Deeds question?
Yes. Commissioner Keith, this is for Register of Deeds.
Okay. We're on TV, Lee.
18 years ago, we didn't have.
I was going to thank you, former county commissioner also, Mr. Lee Warren. Lee, we've all seen it because we all walk around that place, that a lot of times you have overage spill over into the hallway. Do you believe that this is going to alleviate that issue?
Absolutely.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the board?
When this building was designed in the mid-70s and moved into in 1978, these vault doors right here were put there because this was going to be Register of Deeds office space as well. That didn't happen, and so that's okay. So we've been dealing with this space from this point to this point is approximately 105 feet.
One door.
From this point to this point is approximately 150 feet. There are 3 sets of dual 3-0 doors, here, here, and here. So from here to here, there are 18 feet of ingress and egress. From here to here, there's 3 feet. It's a terrible bottleneck. What we're proposing to do is our vital record section is in this section of the office. Our real estate deed vault is in this section of the office. What we're proposing to do is put these two 3-0 doors here. This will still be the entrance to the vital record section. This will be the entrance to the recording and real estate section.
All right. Thank you very much. I think we got it.
This is potential hazard.
And you were willing to pay up to half?
That's correct.
So you're looking for the commissioners to dedicate at least $35,000 to this project?
We're proposing to pay half of the cost of putting in the door.
Okay, Johnny.
There may be some, I think the county electrical staff could handle that kind of thing. So we're talking about the door itself.
He has Mr. Walker has a preliminary cost estimate. The flooring is still an issue because you don't have the same terrazzo floor. We can't acquire that. So you have a cost estimate now of $62,000.
The average is $62,000.
We should say
What's the safe number, Jeff? We want to give you a not to exceed number. we want to give you a not to exceed number if I'm going to make the motion. What was $40,000 reasonable as a not to exceed number? If the register of deeds is picking up what you do.
If there is no requirement for terrazzo flooring, if we're able to come up with some type of aesthetically pleasing,
Yes.
I think you need it.
pleasing transition, and I would say 45,000.
Mr. Chair, see, you always say, don't listen. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the county endorses plan by engineering not to exceed $50,000 for new entrance into the Register of Deeds office.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
could you include in there that the authority to move money from the capital investment fund to fund this project, because we do not have the money in the general fund to do this. For our portion of it, Mr. Warren's money can come from the automation fund.
Ms. White, I would like to add from the capital improvement fund.
Okay, before we accept that motion, I have a question. Let me ask you this, was there any other alternative to this?
I'm aware of that. The only other alternative to this is to remove this wall unit and open up this door for access to this hallway.
But that'll breach the security of the clerk's office then.
That's correct.
Okay. There's a motion to close in a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Unanimous.
Thank you both. Madam Manager.
Yes, sir. Item number 5 are other items. There's no item listed, but we had an event occur yesterday, a phone call from the Division of Workforce Services. So Mr. Moorfield would like to give an update on workforce development, but specifically the negotiations with the prior service provider, EDSI.
Okay. While y'all deciding, can I just do something real fast? I put a little star here for me to put in so it would be on the record that I move that we invite a representative from the P4P and Senator Debbie Aird, if they want to come give us an update at our August agenda session.
I think you already did that.
Well, I didn't know if we voted on it.
Yeah, we did.
We did? Okay, we did.
But give us a name.
You do, you should.
I don't have any problem telling you long-winded.
Mr. Chair, well, Mr. Moorfield's good enough. Can I make a comment? Our manager was at Chamber of Commerce the other day, and she was like a cat in the cat that ate the canary because we had passed the budget the night before, and Doug Hewitt was sitting beside her, and he hadn't passed his budget. But she did a really good job of representing the county and talked about all the great things we're doing. Amy, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you know what, and if I may, before you start, Mr. Moorfield, we all know that, and we're glad.
That's on TV, though. That's on TV.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, I'm glad that you said, Commissioner Keith, and all of us do, we are so grateful and so aware of the fact of our manager and the great job that she does for each and every one of us, including the members of this county. Everyone is just like her family, and so we thank you for everything that you do. Same for you, Commissioner, Rick, are you Commissioner, Attorney Moore, thank you for all you do, I pay everybody.
Nice sound, Commissioner.
Thank you. As the county manager pointed out, we've had an ongoing dispute with EDSI, the service provider in workforce development from July 1st, 2018 until about mid-April of 2020. And it has been a real difficult process to try to resolve some of the issues that they've had because really of more record keeping and deficiencies with stuff being put into the statewide computer management system. But we have made a really good faith effort to try to resolve the issues, pay them what we thought we owed them, and there was a lot of money at stake when this thing began. We we resolved some of the issues we did not resolve to their satisfaction, but based on what our staff's analysis of the situation was, a lot of the stuff they were asking for, we would not have been reimbursed by the Division of Workforce Services out of the state if we had paid them, because they overspent budget in certain areas and there were a lot of issues. But what's happened now is EDSI, probably back in, I think, late February, early March, filed a complaint with the state ombudsman's office for the purpose of another state agency, representing that agency, to try to resolve this dispute and figure out how it will be the right result. And that's been ongoing since that time. And so both the county and EDSI have backed off with any discussions, and have been awaiting that decision for all this time. And then out of the blue, was it yesterday or a couple days ago, Tracy, Mr. Jackson got a notice from one of the employees at the State Division of Workforce Services, stating that she had figured out how much we owed EDSI, and it's a large figure, just around numbers, about $971,000. And what's happened since then is our staff has had some discussions about it. Tracy has sent numerous emails to everyone that he could, including, I think, the Assistant Secretary of the whole Department of Commerce, to try to find out what's going on in terms of why we're getting this from DWS when the Ombudsman's office is handling this. So there's some unanswered questions that we're trying to get a resolution of. And it's been, we haven't reported a lot of this to the board because it's just been a slow process of trying to work through it. Some of it we got through, and we actually paid EDSI, Tracy, what was it, about $140,000 back in April. We paid them what we thought we owed, what we can tell we owed. So it's an ongoing, the conflict is not over. And right now we have a different conflict because we got one agency telling us that we should pay them $971,000 out of a fiscal year 2019 funding, the use of which expires, June 30th. So we're really up against the wall to try to do anything with this because just the timing of it. So we want to continue to work through that, and I think Tracy has done all that he could yesterday and this morning in terms of communicating with the state, that office, the DWS and Commerce, to try to get some direction on what the Ombudsman's role in this is now. So that's where we're at. I'll try to answer some questions if you have some, but I know it sounds confusing. It's been confusing for a year. It is the most strange and difficult contract matter I have ever worked through in 41 years of doing this.
Thanks. Rick, I was under the impression that we knew this was coming and that we paid them some money and that was going to be the end of it. You were completely forthright. You identified this 2 years ago. We knew it. We got a new contractor. But where does this, if we wrote them a check, shouldn't there have been a paid in full documentation or something that says, this is what we owe you if you accept the check, you're fine. But to come back for almost $1 million, is that what you said?
I think it's $971,000.
Yeah, almost $1 million out of the blue through the state agency.
This was a state employee.
Right. So, where's the stop?
It should stop with the Ombudsman. That was what we had, and Tracy has pushed every way he can to get a resolution to this. In terms of, all you do is send emails. The state does not respond very promptly.
Well, for $1 million, maybe right up there. I don't know.
Until very recently, there's nobody working in the offices either, Commissioner Keefe. That's another issue. We've had several Zoom meetings and stuff with the video conferencing stuff. We've had several of those for a long time now.
Yes, sir. I will say this, that it was made very clear to me by the Ombudsman that her authority is separate and apart from the Division of Workforce Solutions. She does not answer to the Division of Workforce Solutions. and they do not answer to her. Well, if she gives them direction, then they have to follow direction, but we have to follow direction too. So we are waiting on the opinion and direction from the ombudsman. I feel like it's going to come soon. It should, because the funding runs out at the end of the month. They're really up against the wall too here, but not like us. We should have known a long time ago.
Okay.
And just
From
wanted,
them.
Manager, just wanted to let you know the status of this now, because this was a curveball. This was a total curveball. for everyone.
Thank you, Chairman Moorfield. And, Mr. Jackson, thank you. Yes, Madam Manager.
Item number 6 are the monthly reports. We provided the financial reports, a health insurance update, CRF, plan update, community development, and engineering project updates. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer those.
Any questions or comments regarding monthly reports?
Okay.
What do you see?
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would ask that we go into closed session for attorney-client 143-318, 11A1, and a A3, and a personnel closed session 143-318, 11A6.
So moved.
After a 5-minute break.
All in favor?
After a 5-minute break.
Yes, sir.
So moved.
Close.
Move to accept the recommendation of our board attorney to consider the retention of outside counsel to evaluate all potential claims concerning Comores and to place this on the June 21 agenda for action.
Okay, well, you make the motion.
Second.
Wait a minute.
Wait, call into the session and we'll get the capital.
Call, the Cumberland County Board of Commissioners meeting back into session. Yes, Commissioner Booth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move to accept the recommendation of our board attorney considering the retention of outside counsel to evaluate all potential claims the county may have concerning Comores and to place this matter on our June 21st agenda for action.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Unanimous.
Meeting adjourned.